Recruiting at Baylor is tough enough, but have we started to see more opponents on the recruiting trail in the last couple of years? You might be surprised by the evidence. This is Locked On Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor. I am your host, Cam Stewart of ESPN Central Texas and the Rogue Media Sports Network. Thank you for making it your first listen today and every day. We are back to football recruiting, and there have been some names. We talked with Will Turboff a few weeks ago. Some names to look out for. We're going to take a look at one today and how that fits into the grander scheme of Baylor football recruiting. Plus, we'll go to the basketball transfer portal as well. We're hearing hints, or one hint anyway, that Baylor's about to bring somebody in, but could it be another one of these surprise, out of nowhere, potentially big time prospects? I think there's one name to keep an eye out for. Oh, and also a former Baylor basketball star is getting his flowers today. Very cool moment for this young man that we all remember playing at Baylor. So we'll give him his flowers too. But starting first with football recruiting. And it's funny, we talked with Will Turboff on the show here about 2 weeks ago, and I believe that day he was seeing a guy named Kaleb Burns, who's a linebacker out of Cypress Fair High School. Oh boy, I should really get that right. He is a three-star prospect at Cy Falls. See what I did? I apologize, Kaleb, and the Cy Falls community. Linebacker at 6'1", 205, about to enter into his senior year. So obviously Houston area, another Texas product. And I kind of saw when I'm doing the research about him, I was intrigued by the schools that are looking at him and the ones that have offered, the ones he's warmed towards, and kind of what that could become. But before we get into that, little background on him. He is a three-star, but he is a very high three-star. Like, he's very much on the brink with the scoring that they do in 24/7 to be a four-star. Very fast guy, 100 meters, 200 meters in track. And you can see it in his highlights. He'll drop into coverage a lot. He's not the biggest kid on the field. Again, just under 200 pounds and at 6'1". So you'd need to beef up for that to get in the backfield in college. But he's certainly producing at a pretty high school level. 73 tackles as a junior, 18 and a half tackles for loss, very much in the backfield, 6 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and a pick. And again, you can see in those highlights, like he can drop into coverage. He's not one of those that's just a hard-hitting, kind of slow-footed linebacker. It looks like certainly at a high level of high school 6A, he can do both. But what really interested me are the schools that he's looking at. Now, 24/7 has him 100% right now to SMU. And we have seen really over the last couple of years, and current Baylor running backs coach Keenan Hall definitely has something to do with this. SMU has really held their own and then some on the recruiting trail. Like, they have outdueled some of their close conference or not conference, but close rivals in geographically in Baylor, TCU, Tech, and have really elevated themselves to another level of recruiting, to not be in the same boat as a UNT or a UTSA or a Rice. Like, they have raised it up a level for sure. So looking down the list, SMU, that's a bit of a surprising one if you haven't been paying attention the last couple of years. And then you've got some of the more traditionals, TCU, U of H, of course, Baylor, and another one, our old pal, Ron Roberts, at the University of Florida. So I'm like, whoa, like, that's a big jump. He's also got Cal on there, has offered him, Arkansas too. That's a little bit more like reasonable, but Arizona, Utah now in the conference, Oregon State, Pitt, Maryland, Tennessee offered him in the middle of his junior year. So it's like, whoa, this is not the usual suspects. Usually these guys that go from 3-star to 4-star in Texas, it's a lot of, a graduation from offers from those schools I was talking about, like a UTSA and a UNT and an SMU, to a, a Baylor or a TCU or a Tech, or if even better, being in Arkansas or Oklahoma State even. That's not the case anymore. And I've always wondered this about conference realignment and conference expansion, where you want the TV markets of these places that you're going towards, but also it gives you a new recruiting base. And I always thought that was a little overblown. Like, the best conference in America is the SEC. The best talent, by and large, is coming out of Texas for high school. So, like, I don't know if it allows for much more of a foothold, because I think they were going to be there anyway. But I look at these, and I'm looking at a 3-star guy getting offers from Arkansas and Tennessee and Florida. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Maybe this is part of it. That, A&M has been in the SEC for over a decade now. UT is now in the SEC. Maybe that is part of all of this. It might sound weird and feel weird, but that could be playing into it. And so how much does that change now with not only some of your old conference rivals and in-state rivals going to a conference like the SEC, but with how much the Big 12 is expanding now? Obviously Houston was always going to be in for a Cypress kid, right? But now you have Arizona in the conference. They offered him in February of this year. Oregon State's looking for a conference. They offered him this year. What was the other one I had seen in there? Pitt's close to West Virginia, which is in the conference. You know what I mean? So it's now so many that are within your conference are starting to say, here's how we get a foothold in Texas. And maybe it doesn't start with 5-star guys. Maybe it's a guy who's a 3-star and rising, like Kaleb Burns, into a 4-star. I found that fascinating. He announced his top 7 yesterday, and Baylor is still in there. They are still on the list. So was SMU, by the way. So that's the one they've got him at 100% right now. So I find this fascinating, and it's something that I would love to hear from you guys about down in the comment section on YouTube, or tweeting at us at Locked On Baylor on Twitter if you're listening to it in a podcast form. I want to see if you hold any weight, give any weight to this, whether conference realignment is actually doing what these athletic departments thought they were going to do in terms of a recruiting foothold, or if I'm just kind of blowing that out of proportion a little bit. Interested to hear from you guys about that one. But first, I got to tell you about how today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for this role, and you want to do it fast. You want to do it fast, but you want to do it right. That's why LinkedIn is here for you. It's not like any other job board, okay? It helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to that perfect role. It's because in any given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. I know that's been the case for me. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you are looking in the wrong place, because they are 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. You could hire professionals like a professional. They know that small businesses are wearing so many hats. They might not have the time or the resources to put it all into hiring. They are finding ways to make the process easier. That's why 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. In basketball news, well, we haven't heard the news yet, but with the Matt Mosley show on ESPN Central Texas, which, by the way, today is the great Matt Mosley's 50th birthday. We talked to Steve Henson, one of the new assistant coaches who came in from UTSA. He was the head coach there for 6 or 7 years, something like that. He had come from Oklahoma, where he worked under Lon Kruger, and was really, he works well with guards, and was definitely a part of that Buddy Hield revolution that they had in Norman and went to the Final Four. But we talked with him the other day, and I said, well, look, I mean, we've had these big transfer portal guys come in and commit, obviously with Norchad Omier and Jeremy Roach, and he spoke very highly of Jalen Celestine. But there's still room on this roster. Is this roster set? Are you guys done? And he said, no, we're not. We're not done. And I was like, okay, it might be the end of May here, but Baylor could be, and it sounds like will still be adding to this roster, which I love to hear, not only because it's always exciting, but because I think they still need to bring in another center. I've said this before. I love what Norchad Omier gives you in terms of rebounding and defensively, and I think he can play above his size, but you can't stick him at center all the time. And right now, if Josh O gets hurt, that's about what you've got at center, and that just can't happen. So I think you need another center. And of course, the cupboard is more bare than it was 3 weeks ago, a month ago. But someone who is still out there who entered the portal just about 2 weeks ago, Ugonna Onyenso. And I hope I'm saying that right. Ugonna Onyenso, center from Kentucky, just finished his second season in Lexington. So has a couple of years left in his eligibility. And I think this kid oozes potential. And of course, I'm not the only one. I didn't come up with that by myself. He is 7 foot, 247 pounds. He is originally from Nigeria, played prep school in Connecticut. And again, like I said, finished his second year at Kentucky. Now, he didn't play a ton, just under 19 minutes a game, but 55% from the floor. So that tells me he's not someone who thinks he's a 3-point shooter and he's pulling it out there. But you look at the numbers, 4 points, 5 rebounds a game. Well, not a lot there. Okay, hear me out here. First off, he's coming in as a depth guy. You know, I would expect him to be in the rotation. Don't get me wrong. He's not going to be buried at the end of the bench, but like it's probably not who your starting center is going to be. So already it's like, okay, well, so he doesn't need huge numbers. And the other thing is, in 19 minutes a game, he averaged just under 3 blocks. That's better than anyone on your team last year and better than almost anybody in the country in 19 minutes a game. A 7-footer with a 7'5" wingspan and a ton of athleticism. Like, that is legit. In fact, there are scouts out there calling him, even though he has limited playing time, one of the best rim protectors in the entire country. Which is some really high praise. And I loved this write-up from Adam Finkelstein, is it Finkelstein? I don't know. One of the best prep writers in the country. But he had talked about after he had graduated high school that his defense is currently ahead of his offense, but has a soft, natural touch to develop both a huge lob threat and a rim runner. Changes the game on both ends. And was a 4-star guy, had terrific defensive instincts, he said, out of high school. 4-star guy out of high school, big time recruit, top 30 recruit in the country. And he is out there on the market. Now, he does have some pretty, high level quarters, if you will. One of which being North Carolina, who we're still talking about trying to kind of finalize that front court with Armando Bacot leaving. Alabama was one that was on the list. They're a Cliff Amore school, but they're still on the list. So there's some stiff competition. I mean, those are, 2 teams who have been to the Final Four in the last 3 seasons here. So that's big time. But I just think if you're looking for, especially a depth guy who is still a rotational piece, Ugonna Onyenso should be right at the top of the list. Hasn't quite turned 20 yet. So there's still a ton of learning for him to do. And I mean, you talk about a place to go and learn to be a big man, even though it's not as big a part of an offense as it used to be for them. Baylor is a great place to do it. They're going to have probably a top 20 pick, a kid who reclassified, play there 1 year. Like next month, you're going to hear Yves Missy's name pretty early in the draft. And one thing that is I bring up a lot, Scott Drew, even I think with John Jacobs leaving, who was a big part of this, but I think Scott Drew can still be one of the great coaches for international players, both as young guys, as transfers, as old guys. All the foreign players seem to succeed at Baylor, and especially the centers from Africa. And Onyenso is originally from Nigeria. He's obviously been in the USA for a while now, but you had 2 centers originally from Africa on your team last year. And it's all the time. I mean, you go down the list, whether it's Yves Missi or Josh Ojamuna, who's going to be in there this year, Jonathan Chamwa-Chachua. Nuni Omot was not a center, but was a long, lanky guy. It goes on and on. Joe Lawal-Achuel. Like, there's so many guys that come from overseas and specifically from Africa who really thrive playing for Scott Drew. And Ugonna Onyenso could absolutely be the next guy in that lineage. And I think that would be a big addition for Baylor. It's one of those that, do I think he's nailed on to become a Baylor Bear? No, but I would have said the same thing about Jeremy Roach, and I would have said the same thing about Norchad O'Meara. This is the spring of Baylor coming out of nowhere to get these high-level guys that they weren't even getting like 2 years ago or last year. Scott Drew always has known what to do with transfers, but these are the most talented transfers he's really ever gotten. And like two of the top 10 transfers on the market, he went out there and got. And neither one of them did we see coming. Were we like, right after the season, oh, that's the guy that Baylor's going to get? No, we haven't had that luxury. I think Kansas probably did that with Hunter Dickinson, who's one of the best players in the country at Michigan. They probably said, we're Kansas, we need a center, let's go get that guy. But Baylor has not had that overall. In fact, this is really like the first spring that Baylor has had that. I know they've brought in some good guys. Ray J. Dennis was a great fit, and he was a MAC Player of the Year. James Akinjo was an all-conference guy at Arizona and had played at Georgetown before that. So, you knew that was a good player. But this has been the spring of high-end transfer portal guys coming out of nowhere to join on for Baylor. And so for that point, a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month or two ago, actually, I would have said, no, this is not a guy. He's going to end up somewhere else. But I think it's one that Baylor could absolutely bring in at this point. Another one to keep an eye out for is another SEC guy, A&M Aggie, Brandon White. He's entered the portal as a redshirt freshman, so redshirted this year, did not play for the Aggies, and he was a 6'10", 245. He was out of California. Had a little bit of interest from Baylor, but I don't know if they ever really offered him. But what I like about White is really Buzz Williams. I think he built a team at A&M really the last 2 years that is very much in the Kelvin Sampson model of the kind of players that he's looking for. Where instead of we need the tallest guys at center or anything like that, he was like, why don't we overload on length and athleticism? And we will work that out. We're going to have a long athletic team that plays really good defense. And if we have enough long athletic guys, it's not going to matter if they're 6'9" or 7'2". If they're athletic enough and play hard enough, they're going to get the rebounds that we need. So I'm wondering if Brandon White might fit the profile there. He is one that doesn't have any crystal ball projections. Neither does Ugonna Onyenso, but he obviously has some very good and popular teams coming after him. So that is one to look out for. I think the Bears could really have a shot at this kid. First, I, and pretty much everyone else, they've got to get their money right? And the way to do that is through Yahoo Finance. All right. That is the number one place that you need to go. For more than 25 years, it has been the brand behind every great investor. Whether you're a seasoned investor or you're looking for that extra guidance like me, Yahoo Finance gives you all the tools and the data that you need in one place. And what they're doing is they're giving you a holistic look at financial news. So what's ever going on in the news cycle, anything breaking, they'll also have editorials, analyst ratings, independent research, these customizable charts that fit to you. So all the data and the news that you're looking for, like you're doing a research on a transfer portal player, they will do it for your finances. You can securely link your brokerage accounts for a unified view of your health, including your 401k and other investments. That comprehensive perspective is really what's going to set you apart and the great investors apart from everyone else. With a community of over 90 million users each month, the real strength is helping you on your way to financial success. So for the comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com, the number one financial destination. That is yahoofinance.com. Once again, yahoofinance.com. From a potential future Baylor basketball star to a former Baylor basketball star, congratulations to Keontae George. The former Bear was named to the All-NBA rookie second team. Big snaps for the Utah Jazz star. Obviously had a very nice year for a guy who was picked just outside the lottery. He was picked 16th. You don't expect much from a lot of those guys, but he averaged 13 points a game over the whole season and was really a huge contributor for that Jazz team. Over 4.5 assists a game and just under 3 rebounds too. Fifth highest points per game average among all rookies and the second highest assist average. Like that's a good start for a kid that was drafted outside of the lottery. I think a lot of us were surprised. I was thinking more like early teens for him. But he showcased right away that he was ready for the league. And I think a lot of us saw that in his college game too. That high volume shooting point guard is very much the play in the NBA, whereas you could still have more combo guards like an RJ Davis or a Jamal Shed here in the college game. And then you've got your floor general guards like a Ray J. Dennis that Baylor had last year. He went crazy, Keontae, in one of those games. He had 9 threes in a game. I think that was he tied the NBA record for rookies in that. So big season for him and very well deserving of that award. The 12th Jazz player to ever do that. How about that? A player to play for the Utah Jazz, not like Bleeding Gums Murphy. Okay. And before we go, I also want to give some shout outs to award winners for Baylor baseball. It was a tough end of the season. The wheels kind of fell off the wagon. The couple of weeks of the season, they miss out on the 12 tournament with a weekend to spare when it looked like they were a shoo-in. Like a month ago, we were talking about them being 5th in the Big 12, but they did get some guys honored today, or yesterday, I should say. Junior DH Wesley Jordan, the sophomore pitcher Ethan Calder, who was really terrific in the middle part of that season, and Cole Posey, who has stuck with this program through a lot, all earned all Big 12 recognition. So great news for them, especially to Cole Posey, man, who has been through a lot. I mean, 2 different regimes and really kind of seeing the program go downhill, unfortunately. From the time he started, they were coming off they were 2 years removed from being a Big 12 championship team to starting to slowly but surely go towards missing the tournament and then having the turnover of a new coach. And he stuck with the program when not a lot of people did. So to see him go through some crappy years for the team and go through that transition as one of the few who stayed and became a leader, to see him get that all Big 12 recognition after a really solid year is awesome. The future is bright with this program. And I've said that before on the show. I'm not saying they're going to be a Big 12 champion next year. I don't know that they're going to push for the conference title next year or anything like that. But this program does have a bright future. This conference is losing 2 high-end programs, especially the last couple of years in OU and Texas. They, of course, gain, in Arizona, but it's becoming, the parity will be there. And so I really hope that this next year is kind of a turning point for what being, middle of the pack. I think is a good place to aim for, a middle of the pack Big 12 team. And that most years is getting you in or right around the NCAA tournament. So would love to see how that plays out. I still have the faith in Mitch Thompson, man. I think he's a heck of a baseball coach. Obviously did it at a very high level, like national champions at the junior college level, and was now McGregor High School baseball coach Steve Smith's assistant through some glory days for the Baylor baseball program for the 90s up to the 2000s and in the early 2010s. was in the dugout for a couple of Baylor teams in Omaha, which seems like a long way away now. But I have a lot of faith in him. So congratulations to those three guys for fighting through another tough season. It obviously is not easy to do that, but to get that kind of recognition is pretty cool. And I know that there's some guys who missed this season, who got injured early on, who I think will be getting some of that recognition next year. Anyway, let me know what you think about Baylor baseball or Keontae George or any of that down in the comments below, or Ugana Onyenso. This Baylor Kentucky thing, man, they keep crossing paths. This is like star-crossed lovers. You can't keep them away from each other. Let me know what you think about an addition like that. I don't have any intel on that, but I think that could be a terrific ad for Baylor. Drop that down in the comments below. Thank you for making it your first listen today and every day. We'll be back tomorrow with your favorite show on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And that is, of course, Locked On Baylor.